And then there's the added joy. In addition to traditional classification levels like secret and top secret, newer restrictive designations for unclassified information like for official use only, FOUO, which actually has been around for a little while, and more recently, controlled unclassified information, or CUI. It's like we looked at secret and top secret and thought, you know what we need? More acronyms. These designations create the same delays and bureaucratic roadblocks as the traditional levels of classification, with just a tad more confusion. Imagine a case from the fight against ISIS. During 2017, US forces in Syria captured critical intelligence on ISIS arms movements through publicly available social media posts and drone footage, only to have it marked CUI, meaning that it couldn't be shared with coalition partners without going through a multi-layer foreign disclosure approval process. And by the time it was approved for sharing, 6 days later, the only thing left to capture was a tumbleweed rolling through the empty arms cache, and the opportunity to disrupt the arms transfer was lost. At this point, it's less intelligence than it is retroactive reporting. FOUO and CUI also create information silos. Some of you may have heard them referred to as stovepipes, where critical data is kept within specific agencies or departments or channels of dissemination, making it difficult for other entities to access. This problem is particularly acute in joint operations where multiple military and intelligence organizations are trying to work together. Each agency operates with its own classification protocols, which slows down the ability to share actionable intelligence. For example, during operations in Afghanistan, US Special Forces frequently encountered situations where valuable open source information, like terrain maps or local population intelligence, was caveated as FOUO, requiring extra steps to share it with allied forces, creating inefficiencies on the battlefield and contributing to mission delays. Now let's jump aboard Air Koryo and take a trip to North Korea and talk about how overclassification has hampered efforts to monitor North Korea's nuclear program. NGA and the US Air Force regularly collect open source information, primarily but not exclusively through satellite imagery, to monitor North Korea's nuclear activities. This data is crucial for monitoring violations of sanctions and preventing the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. But despite being open source, much of the data is classified secret or top secret, making it harder to share with key allies like South Korea and Japan. It's like getting a postcard from North Korea, but having to wait for a decoder ring to figure out what it says. Such delays in sharing this intelligence have real-world consequences. In one case, delays in sharing intelligence meant the international community was caught off guard by North Korean missile tests in 2017. One of the key challenges in dealing with North Korea is enforcing the sanctions imposed by the UN Security Council. Open source information, particularly satellite imagery, plays a critical role in detecting violations of these sanctions, such as illegal arms sales or shipments of restricted goods. However, delays in sharing this information prevent swift enforcement action. For example, in 2018, satellite imagery revealed that North Korea was transferring oil at sea to circumvent sanctions. However, this imagery was classified as top secret and wasn't shared with the relative authorities for 3 months. By the time the intelligence was declassified, North Korea had already completed several more transfers, undermining the sanctions regime. The delays in sharing intelligence also have significant diplomatic repercussions. South Korea, in particular, has expressed frustration with the US's reluctance to share open source information in real time. In 2019, South Korean President Moon Jae-in openly criticized US officials for failing to provide timely, publicly available satellite data that could have helped prevent a North Korean missile test. These delays not only strained diplomatic relations, but also weakened the international community's ability to present a unified front against North Korea's nuclear ambitions. The U.S. withdrawal from the JCPOA in 2018 under the Trump administration provides another example of overclassification's real-world consequences. After the withdrawal, open source information such as satellite imagery of oil exports, nuclear sites, and Iranian military movements showed that Iran was shipping oil to Syria in violation of sanctions. Unfortunately, this information was classified secret or top secret in some cases, and it wasn't shared with the EU and the UN until many months later. By then, Iran had made so many shipments they could have opened an oil-themed gift shop. The revenue generated from these shipments, amounting to hundreds of millions of dollars, supported Iran's regional proxies such as Hezbollah and the Houthis. Beyond the economic implications, the delays caused diplomatic tensions between the US and its European partners. European countries, particularly France and Germany, felt that they were being kept in the dark about critical intelligence, even though they were key players in the P5+1 negotiations. The US State Department received multiple complaints from European diplomats who argued that the lack of transparency was undermining their ability to maintain the JCPOA's restrictions on Iran. This mistrust further weakened the collective response to Iran's nuclear program and damaged long-standing alliances. The delayed sharing of intelligence also had a direct impact on non-proliferation efforts. Iran continued to enrich uranium, albeit within JCPOA limits, and increased its research on advanced nuclear technologies. The lack of timely intelligence sharing allowed Iran to accelerate its nuclear research before sanctions were fully enforced. This had long-term consequences for the non-proliferation regime, weakening the international community's ability to contain Iran's nuclear ambitions.